Okay, peeps, welcome back. So today we're going to be going over the grayscale trusts, and I'm also going to be giving you guys some swing trade ideas for Monday morning market open. So with that being said, let's get it. All right, so first thing I want to go over here is the NVIDIA trade. So we basically took profit on NVIDIA today. So it is a little bit premature. I do still think NVIDIA has quite a bit of room to run up. I'm actually going to run through that with you guys before we get into LTCN. But you can see the difference here. We made basically $163 in profit on the swing trade over the course of just looks like maybe 3 days. Yeah, so bought on Wednesday, sold today on Friday, roughly about $163 in profit. So let's go over the chart of NVIDIA real quick. Okay, so there's a few things here that I want to point out about NVIDIA. All right, so I'm going to make this real quick. We have a golden cross, okay? So we got one of these. We got to break at the downtrend line. Last time we saw this was the last time we had a major market correction back in April. And we went over this in the macro video where we talked about the last 2 times that we had major macro corrections. What happened? Well, you guys can actually kind of see this one here as well. This is more of a flat top with a gap. Not really so much the same as the bullish trend line here, but more or less after the correction, NVIDIA went up every single time the last 3 times. That this is the 3rd time. And it did so, it seems, pretty much every time in either into earnings or slightly before earnings. So you can see the repetition here playing out. Plus, we just had oversold. We have a triple golden cross convergence here between all the indicators. The other thing I want to point out here is if I do a Fibonacci retracement from the previous swing high, which is also the all-time high, to the local low, you can see our target here is $170 on the first 1.618. So even if I were just to measure this, let's say from, I don't know why that didn't work, from here to the top is still roughly about another 13%. But if it goes all the way up to 170, you guys can see this move would then be roughly about, looks like about 37%. So just some quick math. Let's say you put 5,000 in NVIDIA. I'm not sure who all out there among the community can actually do that, but if you did and it went up 37% to $170, which I think is definitely possible, it's $1,850 in profit, so not too bad. And of course, NVIDIA has had massive moves every time we've gotten one of these kind of breakout signals. You can see the daily time frame is actually relatively early still. So same thing here. We got the daily golden cross here pretty much right around the same time as the 4-hour, and boom. The move up was huge. So the last move was actually 63%, so 37% is not even that much. But yeah, some analysts are calling for NVIDIA to go all the way up to $200 a share, or before the split, in this case, it would be $2,000 a share. So let's get into the content now. So I'm going to start on the lower time frames with LTCN. All right, what I want to point out here is actually pretty substantial. So you guys can see we are pretty heavy into the oversold here on the 4-hourly time frame. If I really zoom back here, you can see we only hit it once back here in August. Even during the bear market lows, we did not get quite as low on oversold as we are now. So I suspect LTCN probably pretty quick in the near future is going to have a move back up. Again, RSI massively oversold here. Only saw this once back in August of 2021. So it's been a long time. And we are kind of holding this trend line. There is a gap here that needs to be filled. Okay, so once again, pretty much just, I don't know what's going on here. Let's get rid of this. So looking at the trend line here, you guys can see the trend line moving up into resistance is kind of what I'm looking at for support here. So roughly about 11 to 13. Targets would be 15. And then we'll say roughly about 25 to 27. And then you have 54 above and beyond that. And of course, beyond that, we've showed you guys this every single time. It's except this one because we got to fly through this. But basically, you're looking at 75, 100 to 135. Roughly about 300 to 400, and then 510 at the all-time highs. So we'll give the measured move here 30%, roughly about 136%, and then 375%. If you guys wanted to trade this in a way, what you could do is you could just wait for the RSI to get oversold, and not even on the weekly time frame. If you guys were just looking to kind of build your positions, you could just simply wait for the oversold signal on the RSI to get in, and then get out when it gets close to overbought. Like in this case, you guys can see it worked out pretty well. So you would have gotten in back here, and then you got your oversold signal all the way up here, roughly about there, 57% gain, right? Not bad. And then you can just rinse and repeat as this thing kind of vacillates in between overbought and oversold. It's just an idea for those of you guys that want to accumulate and not kind of get screwed because the market just randomly dumps on you or something like that. That does happen. It's happened to us too. You guys saw that with Soundhound and ALT last year. So BCHG, same thing as LTCN, getting stuck in between the trend line and the top resistance here, which in my opinion is a bullish, potential bullish breakout. Again, we do have higher lows going on here, so we're looking at roughly 540 going out all the way to roughly about I would say about 680 probably. And then 760 as the first target, second, third targets, 1025 to about 1260, and then you have roughly about $18 to $20, and then 24 all the way up there at the wick highs. So if I just measure it, let's say it does pull back into this trend line, 38%, 130%, and then you have 227%, 255%, and 330%. So HZEN, this thing's still stuck in between the wedge. It's not really moving. I suspect it's going to continue to do that until it breaks out. What we're looking for is at least a breakout on the daily time frame, maybe even the 4-hourly time frame above this top trend line. If we get something like that, that's an early indication that maybe this thing is about to rip to the upside. But for now, support sits at 250 to 290, and then you have 380 to 420 at resistance, $6.90 to about $8 at the resistance above that, and then 1050. So assuming you wait for a pullback, if you even get a pullback, it's roughly about 42.5%, 137, 175, and 259. ETCG, so we got a nice little, what looks to be like some kind of V-shaped recovery here. It's not exactly V-shaped, but it definitely is looking like it's going to be. So $8.70 to $10 on the support there. I'd be looking at kind of this red zone here, not so much the channel. This channel served as support / resistance. It's not really a target per se. So $13.10 to about $15.80 there. And then $17.60 to $20. Again, it is sitting right at the top of that support there. So what you guys choose to do with that, that's up to you. 34%, 59%, 77%, and roughly about 100% respectively. ETH, so this one is at the top of this resistance here. Yeah, this is kind of a tough one. I'd be waiting for this one to at least pull back here to the bottom of this green candle. You guys can kind of see these candle lows down here, roughly about 1830. Below that, it's about 11 to 1560. I don't think it's going to go that low though. So 23 to 2830 on the resistance there, and you have 3650, and then of course you have the cup and handle target, which is all the way up here at the previous all-time highs at 46. So yeah, I would not be buying this, even though it's sitting pretty much right along this gap and the resistance. I mean, usually the gaps get filled, but it doesn't mean it can't just come up, fill the gap, and then tank. Of course, I'm not saying Ethereum is going to tank, but just looking at the technicals, in my opinion, plus we have this death cross here, I wouldn't be touching this thing right now. That you guys are free to do what you want, of course. So 26%, 52%, 93%, and then roughly about 149%. And of course, if I go down here to, let's say, the 4-hour time frame, and we're trying to look at the, you would want to, if you would want to get in based on the RSI being oversold, you're a little bit late on this one, so roughly about 2 weeks. But although the price hasn't really moved much, so Again, it's kind of just like a waiting, sitting on cash or cash equivalents and waiting for this thing to actually make a move down to oversold to get in. It's more so position trading, not so much like looking for like a 1-2 year stretch of a 20x or something like that. So Phil G, um, this is kind of a mixed candle. So it is a shooting star candle, which is bearish, but it's green. So I'm just gonna say I'm neutral on this one. I'm neither bullish nor bearish. We'll have to wait and see how this plays out. It is below this previous support level though, so we're now looking at roughly about 5 to 1150 at support, 37 to 40. If it makes an immediate recovery, then that would be the regained support in that case. But as of right now, it's resistance and 400 all the way up at the highs up there. So just from the current level, you'd be looking at roughly about 30% all the way up to 1150%. And then if it gets down here, which I suppose is possible if we don't see alt season for another 6 months, it could just bleed a little bit more. 530% all the way up to eye-popping 5,800%. So GBAT, this thing is sitting on this flip zone nicely. It has not moved. So 450 to 520 on support. You have about 8 to 990 at resistance, 32 all the way up there at the highs. So giving you guys the measured moves here, you'd be looking at roughly about 94% and 535%. GLAV, similar story. So we're sitting on this flip zone. The zone itself is 1150 to roughly about $15. And then, of course, we have the highs up there at 80. And as you guys know, we're looking for a break of this bullish trend line, which we have not gotten yet. Once it breaks out and closes above, at least on the 4-hour, 1-day time frames, I would say that's a pretty good signal that this thing is going to start smashing to the upside. So from the current price, you'd be looking at 370%, and let's just say maybe it gets back down to the bottom of support, which is possible, roughly about 550%. G-Link, nice little bounce off support, and you guys can see this wick buyer bull support right here did end up holding up. So support still is 39 to 45, 66, roughly about $66 to $85 at resistance there, and then 220% respectively. So if there is a slight pullback back into support, you'd be looking at roughly about 91% and 396% respectively to get back up there to the highs. Okay, so GSOL, we did come back down to this trend line. Again, that's the signal. If I was going to get into the short term, that's where I'd get in, at least somewhat. I'd be a little hesitant to go all in at this elevated level because I'm looking at the support down here, but to each their own. So 400 is the current level of support, and then 580 all the way up at the highs. So about a 46% move. That's still not bad, but 170 to 200 is the level I'm looking at. The return on that would be roughly about 220%. Okay, so GXLM, this little line that we have down here has held nicely at roughly about $25. So targets is going to be 53 to, I would say, about 59, and then 70 all the way up at the highs up there. The rate of return here would be 116%, 140%, and 187%. Mana, this one is a little confusing. It is below the support line, but we kind of have mixed candles here. So one is bullish, one is bearish. I'm not really sure what to make of that. We'll just say that roughly about $10 is going to be support right now. So 1760 to 20, roughly above that. Below that, 170, 180, somewhere in there to about 350, although I don't think it goes that low. And then the all-time high up there is 70. So just measuring roughly from that $10 level, you'd be looking at 100%, roughly about 605% respectively. And that does not include all-time highs, y'all. Just so you know, many of these probably will go to new all-time highs. We've had a very small alt season so far. It hasn't been anything like what I've been expecting, not even close. I would say the alt season that we saw was like maybe 10% of what we should see. Really not all that great, if I'm being completely honest. So 430 to 510 at support, $8 to roughly about 960, and then 10 and a quarter all the way up there at the highs for Zcash. So you'd be looking at roughly about 61%, 92% and 106% respectively. Okay, so we're done with that. Now let's get into the swing trades. So there's 5 different ticker symbols that we're looking at here. Sorry, y'all. I don't know why the hell this thing is being so slow. It's kind of annoying. Okay, let's see if I can find it. So first one here is Apple. And again, we're not looking at this on the weekly. We are looking at this on the 4-hour time frame because, again, this is generally speaking where we take our swing trades on the 4-hourly time frame with a golden cross. And, some other key metrics that we look at, like maybe is the RSI getting a golden cross? Are the EMAs pointing up? Did we get a break of a trend line? Is there gaps to fill? We look at other stuff like that. So you can see we just got the golden cross back here. It is still relatively early, but we also had to break this trend line, which we did. We broke it, retested, and we've moved up since. So the point I want to make here is this thing really hasn't moved up all that much. It's only up about 5%. Just to show you how rare one of these golden crosses is on Apple. It's extremely rare. So the last time we had one was all the way back here in April. Once again, right around that previous, prior to the flash crash we just saw, right around that previous major correction back in March, April timeframe. So the move up here was pretty large. It took 3 months, but it was about a 40% gain. Again, Apple is, it's Apple. I don't think I need to say more about this. It's like everybody has a cell phone. Everybody has an Apple iPhone, even though most people can't afford one, but that's a conversation for another day. But there's an opportunity here to make money that, we haven't seen since basically about 4 or 5 months ago. And the setup is there. I mean, all the EMAs are crossed golden. They're all pointing up. We got a break of the trend line. There's this little tiny gap up here to fill. We're not that far away from all-time highs. And as you guys know, Apple, generally speaking, does always go to all-time highs eventually. So what you guys choose to do with that is up to you. The next one I'm going to go over here is NVIDIA. So even though we got out early on NVIDIA, this thing, in my opinion, is still relatively early for a move. So like I showed you guys before on NVIDIA, once again, same thing as Apple, we have all 3 of these golden crosses here, a break of the trend line, which is pretty much what we saw last time. Not in perfect order, but we did get a golden cross here, and then we got this golden cross here during May timeframe, got a break of the trend line, leading into earnings, which is what we're seeing right now. And then when earnings hit, this thing gapped up twice and then took off like an absolute beast to the upside. But from the time of the golden cross all the way up to the highs up there, it was an absolute monster move. So 65%. And then one time before that, you guys can see this flat top back in January 2024. And it was 96%. Technically, the correction was right here, but if you got in at the golden cross, you would have nearly doubled your money at that point. Again, I think earnings is going to send this thing to all-time highs. I've already told you guys the Fibonacci retracement level is roughly about $170. So there it is right there, 1.618. So if I were just to measure this, let's say from the current price to 170, I mean, this thing would be a 37% gain. Again, there are some people out there calling for a $200 NVIDIA even after the 10-to-1 stock split. Now, if you're waiting for some kind of pullback, you're nervous to get into this, maybe roughly around this 117 level would be, generally speaking, a pretty good level to look at for a slight small retracement. And then maybe a bounce to the upside. You can see these candle lows and candle highs here. Should be, it should be pretty obvious that would be the zone to get into. So next one's going to be Tesla. This one's actually relatively early. It's a little bit earlier than NVIDIA. So you can see golden cross on the MACD, golden cross on the RSI. And we did hit oversold on the RSI on the 4-hourly time frame too. So there's that. And we're literally about to get a break of the bull trend line. Literally. I mean, I'm not even kidding you. It's like literally down to the day here. So the thing I want to point out here is last time we had a golden cross on Tesla, this move was absolutely stupid. This was not that long after we told you guys that we thought that Wall Street was basically going to buy this super, super macro low support bull trend line here. And pretty much that's exactly what happened. But from the golden cross, you guys can see that the move here was actually pretty huge. I mean, this thing went from 175 all the way up to about 270, so a 55% move. And the amount of days this thing took was really actually not that long, so about 5 weeks. I mean, in all honesty, if this thing just simply went from where it sits right now back to that previous swing high, that would still be about a 25% gain. So again, this is Tesla. This is the third one we're looking at. Fourth one that we're considering getting back into, and I know we did get out of this a little bit prematurely, but it is, again, VERI. This is an AI play. You can see we got a break of this downtrend line. We also got a break of this flat top here. So if I zoom in here, you guys can see it tested, got rejected, came up, still got rejected. Bear still tried to push it back down below this previous swing high here, and it failed, and then it launched straight to the upside. Next level to get above here is 450, but you guys can see the previous swing high is all the way up here at 780. So even from the current price, I mean, this thing could really still go up a lot, roughly about 105%. So just to show you guys the moves the last time these things had a golden cross. Okay, so we had one roughly about a month ago. Not a huge move, but considering how small this stock is, 25% in my opinion is still pretty good. And before that, you can see this kind of macro support level here, and this thing really just took off like a rocket ship. It did a 250% gain. Once again, I mean, it's pretty much the same thing as the other three stocks. So we got a break of the bull trend line. We got the golden cross and the EMAs, the MACD, and the RSI. The only thing that concerns me is the RSI has hit overbought on the 4-hour time frame. But if I go down to the daily, you can see it looks different. We're just now getting the MACD golden cross, just starting to get the golden crosses here on the daily time frame. So maybe waiting for some kind of pullback might be prudent, roughly about 380 to roughly about 280, somewhere in there. Or 340 to about 280. That's what I meant to say. Okay, so I'm going to look at the weekly time frame on this one. You guys can see we're literally just barely getting the golden cross here on the weekly time frame. Is just starting to cross. So last time we got one of these was way back here. It was actually right before the bottom, so some kind of bullish divergence. But once this thing did hit the bottom and then it took off, you guys can see the move was absolutely stupid. So roughly about 411%. So it went from about $1.50 all the way up to 780. So roughly about a 5x. I mean, if you put $5,000 in, you would have made $25,000. Again, you guys can do what you want to with that. So the last one here is DraftKings. I know this is a very popular one. A lot of people love DraftKings. So you can see we're getting a very similar setup here. This one's actually pretty close to breaking out, just like Tesla. So golden cross on the MACD, golden cross on the RSI after hitting oversold on the RSI. So we have basically a triple golden cross going on here. And then also we're about to get potentially a break of this trend line. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but there is a gap here that needs to be filled, just so y'all know. Well, actually, I take that back. Yeah, never mind. So this one did actually get filled, and then this gap right here does actually need to get filled. So the top of the gap sits at 35.50. That tells me likely this thing is going to break out of this trend line. I can't say for sure if it's going to happen immediately, but I mean, it could happen immediately. It could, or it could take a little bit longer. It's hard to say, but we do have the golden cross now. So we had one before. It was a little fake out, but then, unfortunately, it just went down lower. I mean, that does happen sometimes. This is a high probability trading setup, but it's not 100% perfect. No setup is ever going to be 100% perfect, just so y'all know. But the last time this one did have a major move up, you guys can see it wasn't huge, but not bad. So 18% roughly about 20%. If it was a 20% move, you put $5,000 in, you just made $1,000. So last time this thing did actually have a really large move was back here in the start of January. Had its local peak roughly about February, 33% move, so not bad there. So if it does break out, let's just say it tops out at the top of this trend line right here, it's still going to be about a 30% gain. So that's not too bad. You put 5,000 in, you make like around 1,600 or something like that. Another thing I do want to point out on Robinhood is you can actually put in a stop loss order or in this case, I'd be using a stop loss order, but basically how I would probably play this to protect capital here is I would wait for this thing. Basically, I would buy in on the move, right? I'd buy in to do the swing trade. I would wait for this thing to move up probably about, let's say if I'm looking for a 20% profit, I'd probably look for about a 50% move. So roughly about 10% to the upside. And then I'd look at the charts and I'd say, okay, it cleared this top here. We get some kind of candle close above this red candle here. So a green candle above the red one. So let me go ahead and put my stop in, right? And then you can go back in here and you can put your stop in. Again, I don't really know how this works per se, but I suppose because I've never done this on Robinhood before, but I suppose what you could do is, so if you already had I don't really know how this works. You guys might have to test this out on your own and let me know, but I'm pretty sure you could probably buy the shares first and then come back in and put in the stop loss order afterwards. I mean, most platforms do actually let you do that. When we trade futures, we can actually just throw on a straight trade, no stop loss, no target, and then go back in later and manually put it in. So I don't see why it's not possible here, but if you guys decide to do this, just let me know. But yeah, we're considering taking a $5,000 position on Monday. Probably looking for at least, I would say, probably a 10 to 20% profit, depending on what the stock is. So anyways, hope you all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.